Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where in today's episode, a crazy Karen accuses OP of faking her blindness. My friends, warm up those neck muscles because in today's episode, it's filled with the most entitled people ever. So you're gonna be shaking your heads. I hope you enjoy the stories and do hit that subscribe button for future tales. So I'm a 33-year-old female, and I've been dating a man named Alex, who's 34, for almost 3 years. Alex has a 13-year-old daughter from a previous marriage that he has full custody of. When I first met Alex, he was doing very well. He made 6 figures and he had a decent house in a fine neighborhood. I had a slightly lower paying job. Almost a year and a half ago, his job had to cut some employees and he was one of them. He had to take on a job and he earned much less than he had before. I moved into their house 5 months ago. So since I moved in, I've been helping with a lot of the bills, usually half or more of them. And yesterday was my birthday. I wanted to celebrate at a nice restaurant near us, however, it was closed. There was another one closer to us, although it was more expensive. I suggested going there for my birthday to Alex, and he said he couldn't afford to pay for dinner there, and if we went, we would need to split the bill. Now at this, I was a little bit upset, but he said he would make something himself. Also, the cake I wanted was admittedly somewhat expensive. I pointed out to him, and he said again that he didn't think he could afford it with Christmas coming up, and we would have to go half. I told him that I wasn't paying for a cake for my own birthday, and he said he'll see what he can do. Well, yesterday came. He made me dinner, and it was quite good. Better than most meals we eat, although not as good as it would have been at a restaurant. However, when he brought the cake out, it was something he had made himself. He said he was sorry he couldn't afford a nicer cake, but he made this one and his daughter helped. Now, I pretended to enjoy it, but after, I told him I was hoping for a slightly nicer cake. He said he tried his best, and he couldn't spend the money he had set aside for bills on a cake. I guess his daughter had heard, and now she's also saying that I made her upset after she helped him make it. He keeps saying that I should apologize to her, and say that I really liked it. So am I in the wrong for wanting a nice cake and birthday? Okay, so clearly OP is super entitled, and almost everybody agrees that she indeed is the a-hole in the situation. And I'm actually surprised she didn't ask where her present was as well. Guys, I feel so bad for the boyfriend and his daughter. He chose to do what he could with what he had, and he clearly put an effort in to make it a special day for her by cooking dinner and baking her a cake, which I personally think is way better than just tossing money at a fancy cake and dinner, and OP was super ungrateful and entitled about it. Like, she needs to go apologize to that girl. Thank her for the effort she put into that cake, for goodness sake. She's 13. So this person says, wow, you sound conceited and unappreciative of what you have. I would consider a homemade cake and meal much more of a heartfelt birthday gift than someone forking out $200 on me for dinner. You lucked out with this guy, but be careful because it sounds like you don't realize it, and soon enough, he'll end up with someone who does. Ain't that the truth? Okay, so for some background, I'm a 22-year-old female. I'm very petite, fit, and just by looking at me, one would not guess that I have a physical disability. So 2 weeks ago, I had surgery, with incisions on my spine and on one butt cheek, making walking more difficult temporarily. Now I do have a handicap placard, not just because I had surgery, but for the overall problem that led to me having the surgery. So on this day, I was going out to dinner with my brother. I pulled into one of the 4 handicap spots in front of the restaurant, and this woman in her late 60s, to my right, immediately opened her door to block my brother from getting out. Now, we waited a few seconds, and it became clear that this was intentional. So I get out of the car and asked her if she would close her door. The woman immediately starts berating me, saying that I had no right to use the handicap spots as other people that actually need it would be unable to park. She then said that I am too young and too skinny to be disabled, and that I could just suck it up and deal with parking far away, even though she doesn't know what my disability is. She called me an entitled brat and accused me of scamming the government to support my laziness, among other things. I told her a doctor saw fit that I get a handicap placard, and that's when she said I look fine, and demanded my medical history. I told her my medical history is none of her business, and she continues to insult me, even calling me a lazy bitch at one point, and refused to close her door until we moved. Now, I eventually had enough, and I let her have it. I told her something along the lines of, maybe if you didn't eat yourself into debilitating obesity, others that actually need it would be able to use your spot. She tried to respond by saying that her weight was due to medical issues, which I cut her off to say that if she's gonna make assumptions about me, I will do the same for her. I then called her a miserable old bitter woman, and said to her that at her age, she should have learned to mind her business. She then threatened to call police on me for reasons that she was unable to verbalize, and I told her to go ahead, and pointed to the restaurant we were going to, and told her to send them in. When my brother heard this, he finally crawled out the driver's side. He said something like, "Calm down, let's go inside." And I said that sounds like a great idea, if that nosy bitch will leave us alone. We then walked away with her still yelling at me with her door open. She either didn't call the cops or they refused to come. Now I know what I said was harsh, but I'm pretty tired of people making assumptions about my pain and telling me about my pain. Maybe I should regret it, but I don't have an ounce of remorse for what I said, so am I the a-hole? Guys, I've read way too many stories of Karens trying to police handicap spots, and I'm surprised how ignorant most of them are. Like, not all disabilities are visible, and for her to say that you're too skinny to be disabled and then demanding to know medical history is crazy. OP is definitely not the a-hole for chewing out this woman. She's right. If the woman can make rude assumptions about her, she deserves it right back. I worked at a zoo for over 3 years, and I ran into all sorts of entitled people and parents. Something about being around wild animals really brings out the worst in some people. By far, the craziest parent I've ever ran into was one woman. So it was a typical summer day at the zoo. It was packed, like it always is in the summer. There were tons of kids playing on the brand new playground that we had just opened that week. A few coworkers and I were asked to help with crowd control by the playground, and we had a first aid kit ready in case the kids scraped their knees, got sunburns, etc. And then enters Karen. So out of nowhere, this woman rushes up to my coworker and she's dragging her little boy behind her. She screams, "My son just fell off your playground equipment." At this, my coworker says, "Oh no, is he okay?" Now at this, my coworker looks at the kid, but he seems to be fine. And Karen screams, "No, he's not okay. He has an orbital fracture." Now hearing this, my coworker takes a closer look. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the boy's face. He's not bleeding or even crying. My coworker then asked her, "How do you know it's an orbital fracture?" To this, Karen responds, "I'm a nurse at the local hospital, so I know." Employee says, "Well, ma'am, if you want our security personnel to take a look." Hearing this, Karen interrupts and says, "I do not need some untrained rent-a-cop to look at my son. He needs to go to a hospital. You need to call an ambulance." Now she's saying this all the while her boy's just standing there looking at us, and he seems completely fine. My coworker says to her, "I'm sorry, but I'm not authorized to call an ambulance unless it's an emergency." Karen screams, "Are you blind? This is an emergency. Look at my son. My son is in pain." She then nudges him and says, "Tell them how much pain you're in." Now, this is when Karen straight up crouches down, grabs her son's face, and pokes him in the eyeball. Her kid winces at that, and he kind of whimpers because who wouldn't? She says, "See, he's in pain. You call an ambulance right now, and the zoo's gonna pay for it. I'm gonna get my lawyers, and I'm gonna sue you for endangering my child." Now, my coworker's thinking that the only person endangering this child is his mother, but she doesn't say that. Instead, she calls zoo security, who by the way are all EMTs and trained professionals. When they get there, Karen's throwing an absolute fit, screaming how she's gonna sue the zoo for every last penny it owns, and if they don't call an ambulance soon, her son's gonna have permanent eye damage. At this point, one of the security guys crouches down next to the kid, and he asks where it hurts. The kid points vaguely to his face. Security guy then puts on gloves and goes to inspect the kid's eye, and this is when Karen loses it. She then shouts, "Stop it! Don't you dare touch my son with your penis hands!" The security guard looks at her baffled, and she says, "I will not let you touch my son with your hands, you pedo. I'm gonna report you to the police, and you are gonna get fired for this." She then gestures to everybody and says, "All of you are gonna get fired." She then takes her son and storms out of the zoo with a security escort. And to this day, this stands as one of the strangest interactions I've ever had with another human being. I just hope that kid survived his mom long enough to grow up into a decent person. What in the world just happened there? Like, was that a situation where it's like one of those fake slip and falls in a grocery store to get a payout? Like, I really feel like she tried to fake a bigger injury, hoping that they would escalate the situation, give in to her crazy demands so she can get a payout of some sort. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around why she did that. And hey, let's not ignore the fact that she abused her son in public by poking him in the eye to make him wince in pain to show everybody that he had an orbital fracture, apparently. I'm sorry, but this woman sounds nuts. So, since my parents are more at risk from COVID, I've been going shopping alone more and more often during the pandemic. Yesterday was one of those cases. So, grocery shopping is a more involved process for a blind person. I have to ask a staff member to assist me. I also have my guide dog Gumbo inside with me. The dog in itself increases the instances of bad experiences. Now, during my shopping, I always get a wide array of reactions to my dog, but one in particular occurred towards the end of my shopping. I heard loud footsteps, followed by the loud screech of, "Wow, that doggy is so cute. Can I pet him?" It was obviously a small child by the voice, so I prepared myself before responding that no, my dog cannot be touched, due to him being a guide dog. Now, surprisingly, the child didn't act entitled. She seemed surprised and excited about a dog having a job. She asked me a few questions and then she left. I thought nothing of it and continued with my shopping. So after I finished, I decided to stop by the food court on the way out for some lunch. I went and made my way across the supermarket. I ordered my food, sit down, and waited. But by some cosmic gracing of bad luck, that's the exact moment that this child and their parent decided to walk by. I heard the child tell her mother what I told her, how my dog is working as a guide dog, that I'm blind, and I use him to get around, etc. The mother's not really saying anything, but I can sort of tell by her tone and the few words she does say that she's seeing some issues with what her daughter was told. I decide to listen in, and after her daughter finished her babbling, the mom comes up to me. Now, as I said, people coming up to me is super common. I thought nothing much of it. However, the first words out of her mouth were, "Hey, why did you tell my daughter you're blind?" Now, her tone was very harsh and very accusatory. I immediately knew what was coming out, but as usual, I put on a smile. I told her, "Because I am blind. Your daughter asked me about my dog, so I explained what guide dogs are and why we use them." At this, Karen says, "You are not blind." I say to her, "Excuse me?" Now, the straight shooting words caught me off guard, and she says, "You are not blind. My cousin is blind, so I know what a blind person's like. You shouldn't lie about that." Now, I think you should let my daughter pet the dog. She likes dogs. And it's pretty bitchy to refuse my child something like that by lying. Now, at this, I try to explain to her and say, "Ma'am, not all blind people are the same. Just because you know a single blind person doesn't mean you know how all blind people are. And as I explained, your daughter can't pet my dog due to him being a seeing eye dog." Now, Karen's not giving in, and she says, "Why do you keep lying? Your eyes are completely fine. You're using a phone. Don't say you're blind if you're gonna show you're not at the same time. Why would you lie about this?" At this, I say to her, "Excuse me, but I'm not lying. My eyes looking fine have nothing to do with anything. Not every blind person's eyes look the same. Look, you're stressing me out. I'd rather you just leave me alone." Karen screams, "Just let my daughter pet your dog." I told her, I said no. I don't know why you can't accept my answer. Now, hearing this, Karen explodes and she says, "You said no using that stupid excuse. You're starting to piss me off. And I don't know who you think you are, but I happen to work for so-and-so, and if you don't stop it, I'll get security to throw you and your fake guide dog out of here." Now, I'm sure you get the picture. This went on for a good 5 minutes of her getting progressively more and more angry at the fact that I won't let her daughter pet my dog. The daughter was actually silent through the whole thing. I don't even think she cared that much. The Karen, however, was another story. Eventually, she screams out, "That's it. I'm gonna go get security. If you're smart, you'll be gone by the time I get back, or you will regret it." Now, I snort at her small fit, and I heard her huff and storm off. By that time, my food had arrived, so I start eating. Now, I didn't really believe she would go and get security, but with Karens, you can't be sure. 5 minutes or so went by of me eating. I was enjoying my fries, browsing Reddit, but of course, she returns. I heard her stupid stomping from like 15 feet away. She was raging on and on to an apparent security guard, and she says, "Look, that's her. You see her? She's sitting there with a dog. She says it's a guide dog, but she's not blind. You have to kick her out. Dogs aren't allowed." Now, I sighed, and I removed an earbud to prepare for the incoming ordeal. The security guard comes up to me and says, "Miss, is this a service dog?" I tell him yes it is. He's my seeing eye dog. I'm allowed to take him in here. The security guard says, No, that's fine. I know service dogs are allowed. But that woman's saying that you aren't disabled though, is that true?" I tell him no, she's just angry that I didn't let her daughter touch my dog. I honestly don't know why she cares. Now, Karen hears this and she chimes in and says, "Because you are a liar. I told you I have a blind cousin. Don't you dare try to tell me that I don't understand blind people, because I do." I then direct my attention to the security guard and I said, "Look, I've tried to explain to her that one blind person doesn't represent all blind people, but she doesn't seem to get it. Could you please ask her to leave me alone? I just want to eat in peace. The security guard says, so you are blind? I told him I am. And he says, can you prove it in any way? No, how could I do that? And why? He says, well, it's just she's saying one thing and you're saying another thing, and I don't actually know who to believe. But yeah, I can see how proving you're blind doesn't really work. He then speaks to the woman and says, why is it exactly that you think she's lying? At this, Karen says, are you serious? Are you dumb? Look at her eyes. They're not white or cloudy like blind people are. She's literally looking at a phone. Now I sighed and said, hey, maybe your cousin has those eye symptoms, but not every blind person does. Those symptoms are caused by diseases like cataracts, which I don't have. As for the phone, devices have been accessible to the blind for years. I find it surprising that you have a cousin who's blind and you don't know that. I have basic light perception. I can detect light. I direct my eyes to it out of habit because that's where my hands are occupied. Look, it's not my job to educate you on what you don't know. I then speak to the guard and say, please just ask her to leave me alone. I don't care if she doesn't believe me. You don't need to stand here and mediate back and forth as we're not going to agree. I'm feeling extremely harassed. I then pause for a second and say, you know what? I'm not even going to bother. Look, if you're not going to get her away from me, then I'm just going to leave. Thank you for failing to protect a disabled patron. I stood up to leave, my dog getting up to guide me. I take a few steps and suddenly felt someone grab a hold of my harness handle tightly and pull me to a stop. The Karen screams, wait, let my daughter pet your dog first, then you can leave. Now, you need to understand that grabbing my harness is akin to someone taking away your eyes. She was impeding on my means of navigating, so I panicked. This has only happened to me once before, and I panicked then too. I attempted to pull my harness handle back, all the while screaming, get off, let go, help. Eventually, another security guard hurries over, and I heard him bark out, what's going on? I tell him, she's taking my guide dog, please help me, she won't let go. Now, this is happening while Karen's screaming, she's supposed to let my daughter pet her dog. He said so. I assume she pointed to the guard, and the guard didn't respond, but the way the conversation went, it seemed like he non-verbally indicated that he hadn't said that. The guard tells Karen to let go of my dog right now or he'll escort her out. While Karen's screaming, no, she's not blind, that dog isn't real. Don't just jump in and assume you know what's going on. I then felt the woman's hand being forcefully removed from the harness handle. As soon as I was free, I immediately commanded Gumbo to lead me to the exit, and we walked away quickly. I heard the woman screeching loudly behind me, while the man was shouting, calm down, just stop screaming. Now, I was still somewhat panicked, but I was able to calm myself down as I hurried towards the exit. It was so chaotic that I nearly forgot my shopping where I left it at customer services. I left, called a taxi, and came home. Now, it's really stuck with me for the last couple of days. But the worst part is that these types of interactions are almost a daily occurrence. Blind people are the targets of constant harassment in public, and this woman just went further by physically assaulting me. Now, I know I could have and should have gotten her arrested, but honestly, I was just so panicked and I wanted out of the situation ASAP. Guys, that was a crazy story, and I feel like it went on way longer than it should have. Like, that security guard was an idiot. As soon as he approached her, and Opie told him that she was blind and had a dog, that should have been the end of it. Remove that crazy Karen who's clearly harassing her. Like, why does it even matter if Opie was blind or not to that guy? There's a reason she has a service dog. And the fact that he even asked Opie to prove that she was blind was way over the top. And as for Karen, oh my goodness, I am speechless at how dumb she is. And that, my friends, is r/EntitledPeople. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, give it a thumbs up. That story's ridiculous, right? And if you missed the last episode on the channel, check it out right here. Opie's teacher thinks she's faking an asthma attack and gets taught a lesson she'll never forget. Check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.